In the montane lands of the dwarves, a grim tale is oft told. A story of gods and mortals, of heroes and beasts, of glory and ruin. A story of wealth and death immeasurable. These histories of avarice and toil chronicle the legend of Northolt. Good evening. Tonight, the dwarves of Northhold are preparing a set of royal accommodations for Queen Aiden Perfect Handles, who we hope to soon welcome to the fortress. Our queen's travels abroad have earned her a dark reputation. Rumors tell of her living with goblins, murdering her kin, and consorting with demons. But if she's going to rule our people, I'd rather have her here among dwarves, where we can keep an eye on her. Perhaps we can bring her into the fold and remind her of her dwarven heritage. The dwarven caravan is here to trade and to bring our offerings to the queen. Count Scratches is once again being elevated in status. He's going to become a duke. Before we trade with them, we'll make our offering. We're sending the queen some choice items from our goldsmiths. We're also including a book titled And She Sang the Dwarf. The book's not very valuable, but apparently it was stolen from the mountain home by none other than Laro Ghost Earth and ended up here, so we'll send it back to where it belongs. We'll finish up our trading for the usual fare, including some armor to round out our militia's equipment. Apparently there's been some commotion on the surface. A pack of giant dingoes has been terrorizing some of our citizens outside the fort. The militia dispatched a few of them, but the creatures managed to kill a Marksdwarf. Apparently the whole commotion was pretty traumatic for our dwarves, because 3 of them are now stressed. We'll remove the source of the anxiety among our people by having our militia kill all the remaining dingoes. This male giant dingo got chased into a cage. We do have a tame female, so we could try creating a breeding population of tame giant dingoes. Though our giant coyote and rutherer breeding operation is coming along pretty well, so I'm not sure it'll really be necessary. We'll consider it. The last giant dingo managed to climb up into a tree. I guess we'll have to chop the tree down. And there we are, the dingo situation has been handily dealt with. Those 3 dwarves will be taken off of any stressful duties, and we'll keep an eye on them. They're not very far gone. I think we can get them feeling better. Some of those stressed dwarves were in the Brass Wars, so we've had them swapped out for fresh recruits, at least temporarily. And I think we'll test those new soldiers in another attack on the goblins right away. We'll have them head to these goblin dark pits called Ghoul Talk. And our people have returned. Looks like they didn't run into any problems. We'll keep hitting these pits. Looks like their defenses are no match for us. And that's in no small part because of our equipment. We've been mining a whole lot of adamantine recently. This vein has been quite profitable. It alone has been enough to provide us with a pretty nice supply of weapons and armor. But as we've been depleting it, we've needed to head deeper and deeper down the vein. It seems we've gotten far down enough to hit the Magma Sea. The dwarf who breached into it is Steel, a weaponsmith from our founding 7 dwarves, who eventually ended up becoming a full-time miner. He's trying to dig away at the stone surrounding the adamantine vein, but there's some magma right next to him. Luckily, this particular pocket of the stuff isn't pressurized, so he's probably not going to get immediately toasted as it floods in. There we are, he made it out. Steel will mine another day. The Brass Wars are back once again. They're doing a number on these pits. The population of goblins has been depleted to somewhere around 10. Soon we'll have beaten the goblins back from all of the northern dark pits. But they aren't going to let us do that without a fight. A vile force of darkness has arrived, and at quite an inopportune time. Our returning soldiers are outside in a rather vulnerable position. There's a few dozen attackers, about what we've come to expect from goblin sieges these days. Well, most of our dwarves made it inside, including the Brass Wars, but some of the less intelligent among our soldiers have decided to head back up to the surface to grab some junk instead of retreating. Well, the soldiers made it back inside, but it looks like an alpaca got launched about 100 feet northeast when it got flung from the closing drawbridge. Anyway, we do have one mason who's still out in the open. She has had the brilliant plan to carry a large boulder of saltpeter all the way into the fortress while trying to escape from a goblin siege. The attackers are getting quite close. If she doesn't hustle, she's not going to make it. But perhaps we can better her odds by having our marks dwarves lay down covering fire. Unfortunately, it's too late. She's not going to be able to outrun them. But the good news is, the fortress's battlements are providing our marks dwarves with an excellent vantage point to pincushion these invaders. This is working better than I could have hoped. We're putting bolts into them rapidly, and the goblins are just standing in the line of fire. And that did it. The goblins are tucking tail and heading back to whatever foul trench they crawled out of. Well, let's get out there and get these goblin corpses destroyed. The whole militia's going on corpse hauling duty to get this done as quickly as possible. And in fact, we've got a whole lot of trash that we've been neglecting to pick up. Lots of useless fruit pits and random animal teeth littering the place. So we're going to really get to work cleaning up the mess. Unfortunately, a production order by Duke Scratches slipped through the cracks, so he's punishing an engraver named Eineth with 26 days in prison for failing to fulfill the order. We'll deck out the poor guy's cell with a bed and statue to make his stay in prison a little more tolerable. A planter has just created an artifact, a granite coffer. It's encrusted with granite, diorite, and rose quartz, decorated with pigtail, and encircled with bands of diorite cabochons and rose quartzes. On the item is an image of Goden Branded Lashes, a dwarf, in clear glass. He's some baron that died in the capital along with King Zuthan about 4 years back. Anyway, this is a decent enough artifact. Furniture like this is always good for sprucing up the dwellings of the nobles. We're still working on cleaning up the fort. The sheer amount of stuff that needs to get dumped here is pretty huge. We've gotten the goblin corpses down into the smasher, but you would not believe how many apricot pits and animal teeth we've got strewn across the fort. It'll take some time to get the cleanup effort finished. It is the first day of granite in the year 130, the first day of the new year, and the first day of spring. The fortress is looking pretty clean, as dwarven fortresses go anyway, with not a fruit pit in sight. However, not everyone is pleased by the spotless state of our fort. A woodburner named Zas Zatlogem has slipped into a depression. Now, all of our other dwarves are doing pretty well right now. There's one former militia dwarf who's feeling a little stressed, but seems pretty stable, and everyone else is having a great time. But unfortunately, I don't see Zos coming back from this. She's in a constant state of internal rage, cracks easily under pressure, and often feels discouraged. No matter what I try, she just doesn't seem to be happy here. Instead of keeping her around until she totally snaps, I'm going to give her the same assignment we gave to Laro the human and to the unhappy dwarf that accompanied her. I think this is going to be our general approach whenever a dwarf seems beyond mental recovery. We'll send them out to an enemy site that's been depleted of soldiers, and have them demand to be instated as administrator. Hopefully, the goblins will know better than to refuse, because the alternative is that we keep sending out our armies until they are forced to surrender. Let's hope the goblins are smarter than they look. While Zos prepares for her journey to the pits, the elves arrive, and this time they've brought wonderful things to trade. There are some incredibly useful animals here. A leopard, a giant jaguar, a giant black bear, and a giant echidna. The elves have really gone all out this time. The giant black bear and the giant echidna will be great guard animals near our front entrance. The echidna can even roll into a ball to protect itself and give our people more time to respond. But the leopard and the giant jaguar are war trainable, which is amazing. Both are ferocious beasts, and that giant jaguar is as big as a yak. These creatures will prove fantastic additions to our offensive against the goblins. On the topic of impressively sized animals, our coyote and ruther taming operation is moving forward at quite the pace. We've got lots of tame coyote pups and ruther children. The coyotes should be fully grown in a few months and ready to start work as guard animals, though the rutherers will need a few more years in the nursery. The Elven diplomat is once again having a meeting with Duke Scratches, and wants to extend our treaty limiting tree cutting. Since the elves are playing ball and bringing us what we want, we can abide by this. So long as they keep bringing such impressive animals, we're perfectly willing to cooperate. Now this is interesting. A dwarven child has created an artifact called Adnanir, the Son of Rhyme. A crundle bone pickaxe. Well, I suppose it's not a very intricate piece. It's simply a Crundlebone pick encircled with bands of Crundlebone. Though the material choice is quite striking. Despite being made of bone, it's just as functional for mining as a regular metal pick. That's superior dwarven crafting for you. This will certainly make for a unique addition to the equipment of our miners. The child that created this artifact is a 9-year-old girl named Atur Manome Asal. Not so young as Obok, the prodigy who made an artifact adamantine bracelet at the age of 3, but we can't hold everyone to her standard. In any case, both children have had a promising start. We'll be sure to keep an eye on them. Zos has been successful in negotiating with the Goblins of Ghoultalk, and they have agreed to bend the knee to Northhold. Zos is now leading those pits as their administrator, and has named the new local government the Chaste Palace. A somewhat odd name, but we needn't concern ourselves with whatever administrative minutiae is going on over there. We have bigger priorities, such as the arrival of our queen. The queen's throne room and accommodations are now very well appointed, with golden statues, tables, armor stands, weapon racks, and even a gem-encrusted throne of adamantine. I think our queen will be thoroughly impressed by her new royal digs. I find it hard to imagine that she was ever living in luxury like this in the Goblin Dark Tower. So we're ready for her to arrive, but she has not yet chosen to move to our fortress. We're now getting a migrant wave with no queen in sight. Yes, we're now up to 148 dwarves. It looks like we mistakenly gave a less substantial offering than was required. We'll certainly remedy that once this year's dwarven caravan comes in autumn. We've finished training the giant war jaguar, and we've assigned it to Ox. She's nicknamed him Alath Sword Spatters. Slugger has also been given charge of a war cat, a war leopard that she's named Iteb Pass Shoots, and we're raring to see what these creatures can do. We're sending the Brass Wars back out to raid the goblins yet again. Now, there are quite a few nearby human settlements that we could be raiding as well, but after we sicked a forgotten beast on the humans during the first siege they sent after us, we haven't seen much more aggression from them. Technically we are still at war, but the goblins have been continually sending out attacks against us, so they seem like a much bigger priority. Anyway, we're going to attack the Dark Pits of Menaced Dyes. This is the last of the northern Dark Pits, so once we drive them out of here, we'll be able to start really pushing into their heartland. We're feeling bold, so we're going to send our soldiers out to attempt to raise the place right off the bat. And the soldiers have returned. Ox outmatched the goblins tactically. It looks like we started by sending out the war animals. Iteb the leopard, Alath the giant jaguar, and a war dog called Anguish killed 1 goblin each. Then the dwarves went in and killed 6 more goblins with no casualties. With those pits pretty much empty, we're going to focus on retaking the one site the goblins were able to grab from our people. Back in the homeland, this unassuming hillocks, Hazy Granite, is housing a goblin garrison. We're going to try negotiation here. I suspect our militia has gained enough notoriety among the goblins that threats might be enough to convince the local government to return the site to us. If not, we'll just take the site the old-fashioned way. The prospective administrator this time around is Zasit Rovad Baruch, a former militia dwarf and master axe dwarf, who we had to take off of militia duty. Her nervous nature left her too stressed to make it in the military long term. She's the most stressed dwarf in the fortress, so she's the one who gets to try her hand at diplomacy. Best of luck to her. She's returned, meaning the goblins refused our surrender demand. They will pay for their arrogance. It's time these goblins learned what it means to defy Northhold. Ox is leading the Brass Wars out to drive these interlopers from our lands. In the meantime, our dwarves are getting to work on a new construction. The Bastarium is functional enough, but I think it could stand to be a lot more impressive. The dwarves are working on an above-ground section. Once upgraded, the structure should be a lot more versatile. We look forward to this project's completion. And here are our soldiers, back from the fight. As per expected, our dwarves killed many a goblin while taking nary a scratch. It seems that Ox's prowess in battle has earned her a title among the dwarves. She's now called the Sacrificial Work. Well, she certainly has done a lot of sacrificial work in the mere 5 years that Northhold has been around. She's killed 2 humans, 3 goblins, a giantess, a dwarf, probably one allied with the goblins, 9 crundles, 2 blind cave ogres, as well as some more mundane animals. May her list of victories grow ever longer. Since Hazy Granite still isn't under our possession, we're going to send out another attack on it. I want to make sure those goblins are well and truly licked before we attempt negotiation again. A vile force of darkness has arrived. A goblin siege reached Northhold just after the Brass Wars left. They're coming over the mountains as usual. This is a pretty dicey situation. The moment our soldiers get back, they're going to be stuck out of position fighting the goblins. Hunkering down and raining bolts on them isn't going to be an option here. But our attacks on the goblins seem to have depleted their forces. There's only a few properly armored goblins here. Most of the attacking force is comprised of unarmed trolls. We still have a reserve squad of melee dwarves in the fort, the Purple Mechanisms. They've been training for a while, they've got more than a few combat masters in their ranks, they're pretty well armed and armored. I honestly think they may be able to deal with this incursion themselves. We're recalling the civilians to our fort and sending out the Purple Mechanisms. This will be the first siege we've fought head-on in melee combat. Do us proud, dwarves. Actually, this is about to get a lot more hairy. A whole bunch of goblins riding beak dogs just rode in behind the trolls. I think we're going to need backup from our Marks dwarves to pull this off. In fact, we'll even bring the Deep Guard up. They're not used to fighting in direct sunlight, so we'll station them in the front entrance where it's shaded. This could turn out very poorly, to be entirely honest. But we've got a whole lot of civilians who are working on the Bestarium trying to get back into the fort, and we need to buy them time. All we can do is put our faith in the Purple Mechanisms. Go forth, brave dwarves, you fight for the people of Northhold. And they clash. The fighting's pretty intense here. Our dwarves are cutting down goblins left and right. But one of our axe dwarves has been wounded. She has cuts across her body and damage to her kidney. We've lost a spear dwarf. A swords dwarf joins the fray, cutting down a goblin. An axe lord named Bombwreck takes a silver arrow to the right leg, but manages to stay in the fight, cutting at a troll with her adamantine battle axe. Tabul the spearmaster comes to help her, and they fell the troll. The dwarves have dealt with all the invaders in this area, but there's more spread across the map. Further north, Alath the war jaguar, who is still in Northhold, is fighting a troll, but it doesn't look good. He's wounded all over. I don't think he's going to make it. But the dwarves have arrived, and they're cleaning up the goblins here, too. The invasion has been fought off, with only 2 trolls remaining. One's dead, and the last troll makes its escape. The mountains of Northhold run red and blue with the blood of goblins and trolls alike. One dwarf lies dead, along with a great loyal beast. But this is overwhelmingly a defeat for the goblins. Yet this victory comes with another cost. Some of our soldiers that took part in that battle have been pretty severely traumatized. This is the reserve squad after all, many of them haven't seen much combat before. Ata is a human hammerlord mercenary who we hired some years ago, and this fight really got to her. Seeing a comrade die in battle and taking part in all that carnage has left her haggard and unhinged. She's lost control, she's starting to throw a tantrum. She threw a sandbag at a farmer and started wrestling a dog. She punched it in the leg, fracturing the bone. Ata has destroyed a farmer's workshop. She's calmed down, but we can't just have people lash out like that. Some mercenary if she loses it the moment she actually ends up in any combat. I sympathize that she was put into a traumatic situation, and I honestly shouldn't have fielded someone that unstable in the military anyway, but nonetheless, crimes must be punished. She's been convicted for vandalism and disorderly conduct, and is being taken to prison. Once she's served her sentence, we'll have to do something to prevent this from happening again. I think we'll have to send her off, along with any other soldiers that were too traumatized by that fight, to go seize some more goblin sites. It might seem cold to permanently send off our traumatized soldiers and to offload the problem onto someone else, but what can you do? It's medieval times. The Brass Wars are back. Let's see if that attack on the goblins was worth the substantial losses we've suffered because of it. They met with no resistance and burned the place to the ground. Well, at least the goblins don't have the site anymore. We recovered a tunic and some horse cheese from the site. I'm not quite sure if that's worth the life of a spearmaster and a giant jaguar, but silver linings. Well, it's going to take some time to clean up these bodies. We'll leave the dwarves to their work. Your ruler has arrived with a full entourage. You are now a mountain home. At long last, our hard work has been recognized. Iden Perfect Handle, Queen of the Searing Hatchet, has come to live here in Northhold. We're all apprehensive about meeting her. The rumors of her past are known far and wide across the Land of Granite. Let's pray to the gods that this wasn't a mistake. Queen Iden has a strong will and good intellect, and she doesn't care what others think of her. But she also doesn't care about fairness and doesn't see cooperation as valuable. I have mixed feelings about those personality traits. Surely a ruler should care about fairness and cooperation. But we must have faith in our queen. She'll make her plans known to us in time. The first thing she's done after arriving is head to the temple to meditate on strength. On that note, our militia has been hard at work over the past few months. We've laid waste to a number of dark pits right in the heartland of the Goblins. Our forces have utterly decimated every site they've hit. Soon, the only Goblin site left will be the Dark Fortress, Cruel Ivy. The fortress will be heavily fortified, and more importantly, it's home to a horror of the underworld. The Demon King, Unzo Tamesecret, Lord of Trickery, Treachery, Lies, and Laws. Trying to fight a creature like that directly is suicide. Scores of humans and dwarves from other sites have fallen trying to assault the fortress in the past few years. We need a plan to destroy the monster if we want to end the threat of the goblins for good. But we'll concern ourselves with the Dark Fortress once we've dealt with the lesser settlements. Another project we've been working on is the Bestarium. The above ground section is mostly just for show, though we have added some cages filled with potentially dangerous cave creatures like hungry heads and blind cave ogres. Maybe we'll be able to use them to kill a few invaders. We've also expanded the interior. The northern cell here is designed to exploit web-spitting beasts, like that slug titan that attacked us some time back. Should we manage to catch any such creatures, we can use them in a valuable silk farm. We've also added a new cell to the south, where we've locked up some prisoners from previous sieges. If the humans come knocking again, we can release these goblins and trolls, and see if they'll all fight each other. The humans and goblins are at war after all. That being said, the Bestarium is looking depressingly empty at the moment. Hopefully some forgotten beasts will arrive soon to liven up the place. Now, this next bit's a little embarrassing. I'm not really one to break character when I can help it, but things have taken something of a turn. The save data for this world got corrupted, and it can't be launched. Luckily, I frequently create backups to check in on Legends mode, but I have to retire the fort each time. The brass tacks is that we didn't lose much at all in the way of time, but we did have to unretire the fort in the backup, which can cause some disruption to a fortress. The biggest setback is that Queen Iden is no longer a resident of the fortress. It seems her stint in Northold was extremely short-lived. She moved to Whipdrinks, which would now be the capital again, I suppose. While this is a setback, we shouldn't lose sight of our real goal, which is the destruction of the Goblin state. We'll spend some time getting the fort in order and continue our military effort. It's now early autumn. We've knocked out a couple more goblin dark pits in the interim, but we've run into a bit of an interruption here. An unhappy soldier, Bembul, who we haven't yet removed from the fort, has just had a tantrum, toppling a statue in the temple. This profaned the god Einod, who has cursed her. Bembul is now a vampire, doomed to wander the night in search of blood. But to complicate matters, her curse coincided with a goblin siege, which prevents us from quickly expelling her from the fort. But Bembul is a combat master, and the process of becoming a vampire is said to grant great strength. She might still be useful to us. There's only a few goblins attacking the fort. Maybe she can deal with them. If she fails, then at least the vampire problem will have been resolved. We're sending all of our civilians inside while Bembul gets properly equipped. A goblin snatcher is trying to get into the fortress ahead of the soldiers. If he gets in, he'll try to kidnap any children he finds. That won't do, so we're sending Bembul up to see if she can stop him. The goblin made it in, and he's right next to a child. Ever since the fort's retirement, I've had trouble ordering our militia around properly, so I don't know if we'll be able to stop them in time. But the Snatcher seems to be ignoring the kid. He just ran into our Marksdorf training grounds and is being pelted by bolts. And they got him. But while we were busy dealing with that, a goblin made its way into the entrance. We really need the military to get off their bums and deal with this. There we are, we've managed to order our soldiers to defend the front entrance, and they're making quick work of the invaders. With that situation dealt with, we need to get this vampire out of the fort. We didn't really end up getting a chance to test her in combat, but we can't afford to have her here draining our citizens. She's leading a few other stressed members of the fortress off to go conquer one of the remaining goblin sites. And there we are, the site has been taken for Northhold. The demon's grasp on the land dwindles every day. The dwarf who took control of the site was actually Toulon, a scholar who wrote many works in our library. Not sure how she talked down the raging combat master vampire and managed to take the administrator position, but good for her. The dwarven caravan is here, and since we have a surplus of furniture for some reason, we're going to trade some of it off. We're also selling a veritable mountain of secondhand clothing, and buying up a lot of metal objects. I'm planning on melting it all down and using it for something, though I haven't figured out what yet. I think I also accidentally sold them a couple of our artifacts. Oops. Anyway, our military is getting tantalizingly close to being ready to attack the Dark Tower, so we let our soldiers do their thing. The brass wars and the purple mechanisms have returned from another one of their many attacks on the goblins. Those fiends have been utterly expelled from all of the coastal towns and villages they took from the humans. Not that we can expect much thanks from those overgrown ingrates. Now, only 2 sites remain to the goblins. A small dark pit adjacent to the tower, and the Dark Fortress itself. Before our militia attacks the penultimate target, we're going to equip Ox with an artifact that was recently made by one of our armorsmiths. Weird Spine, the Helmed Venoms, is an adamantine mail shirt. It is encrusted with talc, studded with adamantine, and encircled with apricot wood. The item also features a tiger iron image of our nation's first king, Monam Anvilcleans, being crowned, as well as an image of a finger millet plant in Aventurine, and an image of Scratches, the dwarf, in hoary marmot bone. This is quite a piece. Besides the intricate designs, it's also made of the strongest, lightest metal in existence. Ox-Bitten Fortress, the sacrificial work, will no doubt make good use of this treasure. As our militia ships out to strike at the last dark pit, we should take a moment to reflect on the fortress. We've conquered our own little mountain, and employed it to defend our people. Tamed giant coyotes and beak dogs stand vigil on Northold's peak and at its base, watching for intruders. Alongside the fortress stands a great prison able to house the most horrific beasts of the deep. Below the surface, the dwarves have created a bustling metropolis. People from across the continent come to visit Northold's renowned tavern, the Large Mushrooms, stocked with the finest dwarven delicacies and liquors. The dwarves flaunt their treasures in the center of the tavern, the greatest craftsdwarf ship in the world, forged of gold and adamantine. Deep below the fortress, 3 veins of that blue ore lay bare, exploited by the dwarves as fully as they dare to equip our unstoppable military force. Our dwarves, over 150 strong, live in absolute luxury, their quarters filled with golden statues and masterful engravings. Yet the most opulent residence of them all remains empty, abandoned by a mysterious queen who seems to have no interest in our wealth or martial strength. In a mere 7 years, Northhold has accomplished feats the likes of which the Land of Granite has never seen before. We should be proud of this testament to the ambition and power of the dwarves. Northold's militia returns, victorious. The last dark pit has been abandoned. All that remains of the once mighty forces of the goblins is a single dark fortress, Cruel Ivy. Victory is within our grasp, but we can't be hasty now. The last bastion of the goblins is not going to be easy to assault, for it is guarded by a most terrible creature, Unzo Tamesecret, the Trust Moth, the Dark Violet Demon King of the Goblins. He is the only one of his kind. An enormous civet twisted into humanoid form, with external ribs. It squirms and fidgets. Its eyes glow lime. Its dark violet hair is long and straight. Beware its poisonous vapors. This is the creature that started this war. This beast is responsible for the death of the late great King Zuthan. Only by destroying the demon utterly can we finally avenge the king, and all others who the goblins have murdered. But In a direct assault on the demon's home turf, killing Unzo would be nearly impossible. Instead, I have a different plan. Around 100 goblins reside in the tower, and I think we might be able to convince them to see the writing on the wall. While our military can't kill Unzo, scores of goblins will be killed if we start sending our armies out against the tower. I doubt the goblins will be willing to put down their lives just to protect their master. Unzo's the one who got them into this devastating war to begin with. Instead of assaulting the tower, we're going to incite a revolt. We'll agree to let the goblins live if they help us execute Unzo and install our own local government in his place. If we can convince the goblins that betraying their master is in their best interests, I don't think they'll lose any sleep over helping us overthrow him. Ox, the Brass Wars, and the Purple Mechanisms are marching off to storm the tower and incite a goblin revolution. In the mid-spring of 132, the fortress of Cruel Ivy was surrendered to the Uncommon Ales. It's done. Our vengeance is complete. The revolt was successful, and with the help of the goblin residents, our soldiers were able to capture and execute Unzo Tamesecret, along with his 2 closest underlings. All 3 were executed by dogs? Unzo himself was decapitated by a canine executioner, while 2 other dogs executed the goblin's confidants, one beheaded and the other hacked to pieces, by war dogs. That certainly can't be a good way to go. Ox has instated herself as ruler of the tower. She has certainly earned it. Ox has felled foes uncountable and coordinated the entire war. We'll need her expertise out there to keep the goblins in line. Those goblins are now citizens of the Searing Hatchet, and their transition to life in Dwarven society will be smoother with her expertise at the helm. Nonetheless, we'll send out a messenger to request some of our soldiers return to Northhold. We'll need people here to defend the fort, though we'll leave behind a garrison to keep the peace. And we're going to send someone else over to the tower. If Ox is going to rule there, Doc should be at her side. We can find someone else to run the hospital. I'd say both of them have earned a happy ending. Doc says a prayer to Einod, god of minerals and fortresses, and heads off to rejoin her lover. The soldiers we requested have returned, and have rebuilt the Brass Wars under new leadership. They'll be able to protect Northold, but perhaps the need for their military efforts is coming to an end. With our true enemies vanquished, and the humans content to leave Northhold alone, it seems like the fortress might finally be able to embrace peace. Many dwarves have been lost over the years, and perhaps many more will be lost still. All fortresses are doomed to fall someday. But today is not that day. The machinations of our queen scarcely seem to matter any longer. The Uncommon Ales have crushed all those who stood in the way of their glory and created a veritable dwarven paradise. But there's still one thing left undone. Steel, the miner, is carrying something precious up above the surface. When he first arrived in Northhold, along with the 6 other initial inhabitants, Steel dreamed of forging an artifact steel sword for the great King Zuthon. The death of the king made that impossible. But with Zuthon avenged, Steel has forged a new blade. It's not an artifact. Steel has been a miner for some years, so he never trained his weaponsmithing to be able to create anything like the masterwork adamantine arms our militia is equipped with. But this sword is good steel, well balanced and superiorly crafted. The kind of blade that was still used back in the years before Northhold. At the very summit, Steel places this offering on a golden pedestal, a final gift to the king. Avenged, may he finally rest in peace. And with that, the story of Northold comes to a close. Perhaps a less grim ending than was once led on, but maybe these dwarves deserved a peaceful conclusion. However, make no mistake, there are yet more stories to tell, of other lands and other peoples. Do find me again some other night, to hear more stories of the dwarves.